Hey everyone, what is up? Welcome, happy Friday first of all, and welcome to another live stream by the Birb Nest. We are during our 14-day Congress, celebrations for the 200,000 followers of CryptoBirb. Actually now he's at 240,000, so you cannot keep up with this guy. But we have a very, very interesting live stream today with a very special guest. And at this point, I would like first to welcome Aperture. He will be my co-host. Hey man, how are you?
Hey, hello, good day. I'm looking forward to this one. I checked the website and there is so much going on in the project, so I'm interested in hearing about RADIX much more. Yeah,
definitely. But before we start, just keep, guys, your eyes in the description of the video. We have a very nice giveaway. We are going to give the secret code during the live stream. And also keep in mind that along with the 14-day free access that you can get to our Discord community, you can also get a 30% discount on our most popular products. Okay, so before we start, let's hear from our sponsors.
PrimeXPT is the most powerful trading platform offering immediate access to over 30 assets. Trade cryptocurrencies, forex, commodities, stock indices, and much more, all from a single Bitcoin settled account. Visit the link below and start trading on PrimeXPT in minutes.
Birb Network is an interoperable DeFi ecosystem offering token pre-sales, staking as a service, project incubation, and much more. Visit thebirbnest.com/Birb. Globe is an upcoming crypto derivatives exchange offering up to 100 times leverage on crypto and DeFi perpetual contracts. Sign up for early rewards at thebirbnest.com/Globe. RADIX is the first Layer 1 protocol built specifically to serve DeFi. More information at thebirbnest.com/RADIX. YFDAI is democratizing finance by creating the most secure, transparent, and user-friendly ecosystem of DeFi products. To learn more, visit thebirbnest.com/YFDAI.
Okay, we are back, and at this point, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Piers Ridyard, the CEO of RADIX.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
How are you?
Yeah, really good, really good. How about you guys?
Yeah, not bad. Where are you based?
So right now I'm some random place in Switzerland, and when I say random, it is sort of in the middle of nowhere. But it's nice. I got mountains and forests and stuff. So yeah.
Good stuff. So in today's live stream, we are going to talk about RADIX. We are going to expand to DeFi space because lots of people are very interested into understanding what DeFi is, and I think they would love to actually to start investing, but they don't know how. They don't know not just the way to invest, but also how to do it in a secure way. Which is a very important thing. And yeah, would you like to give us some background first of how you started with DeFi and how you started RADIX and what is the vision behind it, behind the project?
No, absolutely. So just a little introduction to myself. I am now CEO of RADIX. Previous to that, I originally went to university to do aerospace engineering. I changed to Chinese and business, went to China, learnt Chinese, did my CFA, my Chartered Financial Analyst exam level 1, and then did a degree in law as well. And then prior to RADIX, I was sort of mining on the Genesis block of Ethereum, got into the Ethereum community super early, started building things on top of it. The first thing I built was an insurance company that used DLT products to clear and settle insurance deals. Basically, that went through Y Combinator, and then at the end of Y Combinator, I ended up joining RADIX. And RADIX has been this really interesting journey of a core of technology that has sort of had this set of principles that we believed were important from day one, that often you find in business things are often intuitive to start off with, and then as the market progresses, you see how things actually, like, your intuitions start to play out. And so we understood that it was really important that developers were able to build quickly, but not end up breaking things. When we saw Solidity, we were like, that's not a good approach to language building, and that's been played out. There's been $285 million of hacks to date on Ethereum, and from our interviews with the leading DeFi projects and the leading Solidity developers, it can take up to 90% of a Solidity developer's time to secure an application, and leaves only about 10% of their time building applications, which is insane.
It's not even efficient, right? If you want to scale, and then you spend most of your time just closing holes, it's not going to work.
And it also makes you build in a very defensive way. And like, building in a defensive manner is good from a certain point, but also it increases the barrier to entry. It makes people much more risk averse in the kind of things that they create, are less sort of like expressive in all of the things that could be created, and it's a waste of time. And so we were like, what if we could flip those numbers? What if we could 10x the productivity of developers? How would that change the space? So that was one of the first things that we sort of decided that we really wanted to make sure was part of RADIX. The second thing was this idea that these networks are systems of incentives. That's all they are, right? Like, Bitcoin came up with this idea of, what if we paid people to give computing power to a network? And we realized that, well, you don't have to stop there. Like, right now, the entire crypto community, the entire DeFi space relies on open source code, which is awesome. Like, that's fantastic. But those thousands and thousands and thousands or millions of hours of developer time that went into building those libraries, do any of those developers see any upside on, creating the ERC20 contract or the ERC5721? Yes, the community does better, but that developer or set of developers really put some time and effort into creating something that, would be better if there was some kind of system of incentives involved in that as well. So at RADIX, we realized that you can make the entire ledger essentially an open GitHub repo, that every time someone uses a piece of code, puts it into a decentralized finance application, developers can now get a royalty for it. So incentivize the intellect that you want to see in the space, as well as the behavior from a crypto economic point of view. And then the last thing that we sort of built at RADIX was this idea, and like, this is the longest thing that we've been working on, that there's three types of scalability. And actually, for us to be able to get finance in front of 7 billion people, you have to be able to scale to 7 billion people. But most importantly, that what we're seeing in DeFi today, applications have to be able to talk to each other without any friction. And that's something that RADIX has been a core to RADIX. How do you build a linearly scalable network that doesn't get in the way of application success in building these applications and products for people?
And we already have a comment here from Rich. On ledger royalties for devs is brilliant.
Thank you.
Yes, so this is one way to bring on more developers to your platform and develop secure applications on your platform. Are there any other incentives for developers building on RADIX, for example?
Sure, absolutely. Look, there's going to be bootstrapping at the start, but like, we're fortunate in some ways in that we took a long time to build what we think is building properly what we wanted to deliver. So we were able to watch the market and see what kind of mistakes and what could be made. Like, let's take EOS as an example. Raised a huge amount of money through $3 billion at trying to create a developer ecosystem and failed. And a big part of that is because they incentivize the wrong kind of developer ecosystem. They incentivize people just making up, crappy projects, asking for grants, and it happening. So there's the right way to incentivize and the wrong way to incentivize. My belief is that if you are not incentivizing the bootstrapping of a system that is going to be self-sustaining, then throwing money at the problem is not going to solve it. You have to have a strategy by which the money that you're putting in early is going to create a system that helps reinforce itself, which is why, however we bootstrap the system, it's always going to be looking at, is it incentivizing success in a way that gives benefit back to the community and induces more liquidity and creates more functionality that is actually being used, rather than just how many logos can we have, how many brands can we have, how many developers can we say are building on our platform. Like that's vanity metrics, not real use.
Yeah, it's more about the quality than the quantity there.
Yes.
Yeah. And for a developer, not only the incentive matters, maybe also like what type of language you're coding in. Could you tell us a little bit more, what attracts developers from the ecosystem point of view or from the language point of view?
It's a really interesting question, and it's something that we spent sort of quite a lot of time looking at. Like, developers don't try new languages because they're paid to, generally, unless it's at a company and it's part of their core work, right? So like if I'm at a company and I'm building, and my boss comes along and says, hey, build this in C, I'll go build it in C. But fundamentally, there's a big community of developers who just like playing around with stuff. Like, they're like, oh, Rust looks really cool, I want to go play with Rust. Haskell looks interesting, I want to go play with Haskell. And at the start of Ethereum, the thing that was the thing that like drove the developer community more than anything, and people forget this, is that it was fun. Like, it wasn't really serious. There wasn't huge amounts of money sort of flying around. There was this promise of what could be. And like, I see comments, like I've seen developers literally say like, Ethereum isn't fun anymore. And like, this is a really important core point of what makes developers want to try new things. And Solidity isn't fun. Like, Solidity is a really badly designed language for finance. It's a really badly designed language for security. And that's kind of because they kind of went, well, we want to make it like JavaScript because JavaScript's the most popular language. But no sane person would build a banking application in JavaScript. No sane person would build anything.
Way.
Right. And this is an intrinsic problem, but like, that has meant that there's this massive ecosystem that is built on this really poor foundation. And that's why you get the 90-10, 90% of their time securing, 10% building functionality, $285 million in hacks. So with RADIX, we took two approaches with the language. The first was at a very low level, and this is sort of like the geeky bit of it. At a very low level, at the execution level, how do we make this as efficient as possible so that scalability is preserved? And what a lot of people don't realize is that the EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine, is the biggest bottleneck in Ethereum. It's the biggest bottleneck in DeFi, period, actually. So, you have these smart contract platforms saying, or new ones like Avalanche or Hashgraph or Polkadot saying, oh, we can do 10,000 transactions per second or whatever. But if you then make that into smart contract operations, suddenly it drops massively low. You suddenly get down to the hundreds or even tens of transactions per second, because the Ethereum virtual machine is just so bad at executing this kind of scalable state in a parallelizable way. And so it's actually the biggest problem. And then the next level up. And so how RADIX solved that is we went, right, instead of having one big virtual machine, we'll describe smart contracts as little finite state machines. And once you have them as little finite state machines, this is how you build things like quant trading algorithms, or how you build things like, the NASDAQ order matching system. You build it as a finite state machine, a specific purpose finite state machine, and suddenly like just 10x, 100x more scalable, right? And then from the other side of it, from a language point of view, This has just been a process of going and talking with DeFi developers and sitting down with them and going, how would you like the syntax to be? Like, how do you architect this? If you were going to build Aave, if you're going to build Uniswap, how do you architect this? And then let's make the language as close to the way in which you architect and describe these things as possible. So things like having, assets as primary resources and having the idea of like, you can't destroy assets, you can only move them. All these kind of like primitives that are really important. You can suddenly build a language that is way better. And then if you start to take the good ideas from things like Rust and things like Haskell and stuff like that, where Rust is a language where you trust the compiler. The compiler comes up and goes, no, you can't do that. And you're like, okay, cool, I can't do that. And so you can even start thinking about how to sort of give people Rails and compile time to stop things like, I don't know, reentrancy and stuff like that, which again just lowers the barriers to entry, means that you move faster, means that you can build better applications at the end of it.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, but it still feels like a lot of developer centered, and that's, I think, maybe what people like about Radix, because you're not into all the hype, all the
how dare you?
Well, mostly like as a trader myself, I know I have to follow the hype in crypto because that's where the chart bumps, but also that's where the products die and the people lose interest in the project. So there is a question in the chat, and maybe it's good to answer that. Why is Radix so under the radar in general public? Because it seems to have some very good fundamentals here.
That's a really good question. Like I'll be honest, we haven't really cracked that code yet. So like we are doing better, but like it's still one of those things that is difficult to actually engineer, or we find it difficult to engineer. Maybe it's because of the way that we approach things. And I think let me just talk a bit about sort of the difference between long-term fundamental value and short-term value, which one of my approaches to fundamental approaches to strategy, and I say fundamental a lot, I'm going to have to stop saying that. One of my approaches to strategy is that the thing that a company lives or dies by in the long term is momentum. Like what you want is you want to follow an exponent, and you want there to be no interrupts to that exponent, right? And to do that, you have to have nothing that sort of breaks the progression of moving up that exponent. And our view is we are currently a pixel, as in DeFi as a whole, crypto space as a whole, is a pixel on the global financial system. It's not even a pixel. Like I actually did some little diagrams recently on it, and I had to like zoom in to create the pixel
to magnify to see the entity there.
Right, we aren't even a pixel yet. So if we want to get 7 billion people into a system that can fund, that the entire global financial system can run on, then you need to fundamentally get a bunch of things right. And so what our approach is here is essentially, if you go out and pump yourself in the short term, you basically lose a load of credibility in the long term. People come and then they dismiss you. And we've been building very carefully to make sure that when all of the pieces are in place, nothing is in the way of that momentum, but we're not there yet. So, especially in bull runs, you can spend ridiculous amounts of money on marketing and still not be heard through the noise. And if we don't have an activity to go to, like our mainnet's not live, our build environment is not live, developer royalties aren't live, like our linear scalability system isn't yet in place. It's all still just coming along the path, right? And we are building and delivering on schedule and to date, but we're still early from the point of view of when we should start shouting about this. But from the point of view of having a crack at the global financial system, some people go, oh, we're $130 billion. It's like big whoop. Like the entire global financial system is $360 trillion from the point of view of global wealth. So like, and you know, that's not even 1% where we are right now. And yes, the exponents move quickly, but like it's essentially just making sure that we are laying the foundation for success at a global scale, rather than like rushing to the finish line with a half-finished job that then you end up getting this problem that Ethereum has, which is they just can't move because there's too much residual infrastructure in place.
Yeah, I think there is a comment that summarizes this fairly well, like nail the fundamentals and the hype will follow sooner or later.
Yes.
And I think if you have that solid base, you know, this isn't a project that's done in 1 or 2 years. You know, you want to build a whole ecosystem on top of this, and that takes years to develop.
So I would just as a note on that, I am not someone who just believes the sentence "build it and they will come." I believe that everything requires great marketing, but I think that the right marketing at the right time is absolutely essential. And like also, crypto community is everything. And if you get a load of like people who are coming in for like short-term pump, you don't get a community of believers who are trying to actually make something come about and build something real. And if you attract the wrong crowd, then you're just going to be constantly bashing your heads against a wall whilst you're trying to build fundamental value. And people are like, when's the next thing? When's the next thing? When's the next thing? And but that's crypto. Like that's the world that we inhabit.
In every space, everything is about marketing, right? But right. If you market something right, you will actually raise the brand awareness. But if these people come to your brand and see nothing, then you will not be able to retain them in the project. So I have a question, because I have a question about developers. So you incentivize developers to develop things on RADIX, right? And do you have, let's say, and you develop a new language for that? Do you have a special onboarding process for developers that might be interested into developing things?
So yes, there will be. So Scripto is not yet public; it's not yet released. We're still testing it with, you know, we're getting feedback to make sure we're constantly getting feedback and iterating and getting feedback and iterating, so that when it comes out, we can be like, well, we've tested this. This should work really, really well. But yeah, like fundamentally, when it's available, there will be plenty of opportunities to get developers into RADIX for sure.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And tell me a few words about DeFi. Where do you see? What are the problems right now? I mean, you mentioned the hacks and you know how companies dedicate 90% of the time into you know making the code more solid. But what are the pros and cons right now for someone to invest in DeFi?
So the pros are essentially that right now globally there's a yield famine, right? Like money just doesn't get you money in a bank, in a savings account, and like the stock market's looking a little bit wobbly now as well. And so that yield famine is making people worried. People are like, I am less and less sure about the value of my money. I'm less and less sure about inflation. I'm less and less sure about what the future holds. And what this entire space gives an opportunity for you to do is go, right, I can check out of this system. Like if my bank fails, it doesn't matter. My savings aren't in there. And like for America with their FDIC insurance is pretty high, but some countries there's like little to none. And like in the UK, if you got more than £50,000, which is, you know, a fair amount of money, but you got more than £50,000 in your bank account and the bank fails, sorry. And so I think that this positive ability to just go and say, right, I can go and get 20% per annum on fiat, like on stable coins, and suddenly I'm way better off, and I don't have an institutional risk potential. The downside is that you don't have customer service or support, really. There's constantly people trying to hack you. There's constantly people trying to get your keys away from you. Once if you do something wrong, it's gone. Like, it's just like,
Yeah.
whoops. And like, there's been some amazing examples of just crypto being like, yeah, this is non-reversible. Of like, I mean, the parity wallet hack, where
it requires a lot of education, right?
Yeah.
If you go to retail investor and say, hey, look, Hercules, you own your money. Right? Like, whoa, that's a lot of responsibility, and
Right.
that's you need to take people out of their comfort zone and understand, the profit that the gains that they might have if they go out of the matrix, if I can call it the matrix. So it's and indeed it takes visionary people, and I think you are one of those, that can speak about how DeFi can scale from what it is now to 7 billion.
So
people.
what you're talking about there, from the point of view of the consumer experience, there's a lot to build, and from the point of view of education, there's a bunch of stuff RADIX is doing for that. The first is, from the point of view of education, we've established the GoodFi consortium, which is a not-for-profit specifically to get 100 million people to put $1 into DeFi, and we've got Aave and Mstable and Chainlink and like a bunch of other people. We've got a load of new people that we're going to be announcing soon as well. And this idea is like, crypto's great for the insider. If you work in crypto or you're a trader, like, you know all the jargon, so you jump into the trade channels and people are like, hey, this is the next yield farming opportunity, or like, watch out for the rug pull, don't get wrecked. And like newbies are like, what the hell is this? And even the experience of just owning crypto for the first time is still really, really difficult. So what we did with GoodFi was like, look, crypto is really well served in the like insider, here's the information about the chain analytics type thing, but it's really, really bad at just explaining things in simple terms to new users. Like, what is the resource that we could create collectively as an industry to just help new people get involved? And we've already done a design sprint on this. We went and like spoke with people that didn't own crypto and spoke with who were looking for investment opportunities, spoke with people who had Bitcoin but not yet got into DeFi, got them through different flows, saw what kind of like problems they came across, and it was mind-blowing how much you forget that you forget other people don't know. So that's a big thing that we're doing just for the industry. Like, it doesn't directly benefit us, it just creates the TAM, right? It just increases the total addressable market. And then on the other side of this, like user experience, like I keep banging on about this, but like we as the crypto insider community have been gaslighted into believing that our user experience is good, like MetaMask user experience is good. Like, it's not, it's awful. Like the idea that clicking sign on something that doesn't tell you what you're signing in like plain English, the idea that once you click sign, it can disappear and you have no idea for 10 minutes what the hell has happened. Like,
yeah, exactly.
The idea that you send the wrong thing to the wrong address and it doesn't go, oh no, you probably don't want to send it to this address. Is this what you meant? It just goes, yeah, sure, you can send it to whatever address you want. And if it's gone, it's gone. Like, this is all unacceptable. The idea that I can just lose my keys, and this is a really important one that sort of we've done a lot of like thinking about, which you'll hear about. This is a tease of more stuff to come later in the year. But why does your key have to represent your account? And this is a really important point, is like, what the key does is it gives permission to administer account, but why are they necessarily intrinsically linked, and you can't do something more clever in how you make accounts a separate concept to a keys and then can create more ways of recovery? And like, Argent's doing good thinking like this with their smart contract, but it's incredibly clunky. You can actually bake things like that much more in low level into the language, and suddenly you can make things like key recovery a less of a problem. Like, I did some searching before this thing. $140 billion has been lost as a result of lost keys. 140 billion. Like, that's insane.
What can imagine what you can do with all this money, right? And towards poverty. I don't know, but it's crazy. It's crazy just because people lost their keys, and it's one. I think I was discussing this with you, Aperture, like a few weeks ago. You hold your fate. You hold your wealth, and you have total control of your wealth. And then something happens to you.
Right.
It's lost. Everything is lost. Right. And this is also something that people in crypto have to think about. How they can secure this if something happens to you. Right now, for example, I have to write a document for my partner.
Yes.
And speak about MetaMask, speak about exchanges, speak about this, and provide all the instructions how to get in there. And it's like
it's insane because, like, as you increase security, you increase inconvenience for anyone else being able to do it. And like, I'm the same thing. And like, I've sat down my wife and we've gone through it together, and she's been like, I am not going to be able to do this on my own. Like, please don't die. And like, she has a PhD in nanoscience and tissue engineering. She's a smart cookie, and she still goes, this is insane. So yeah, like, absolutely. And there's like good ideas that you see, like dead man switches. Like, if you don't ping it at least once a year, then it automatically sends to another address or something like that. Like, all of these things can be built. You have programmable money, of course you can, but it's often because people have not just thought better. And like, a lot with what RADIX is just not accepting the status quo as the way it has to be. And this comes into sort of technology-centric design versus user-centric design. You look at the user and go, what does the user need? Like, what is a user outcome that we care about? And then how do we engineer towards that, rather than how do we solve this engineering problem with an engineering solution? And like, the key representing a wallet is an account is a perfect example of that, where it's just like, well, it's not for humans, it's for machines. It's like, well, no, it is also for humans.
Yeah.
Eventually the humans have to work with it, so copying pasting is fine, but making it readable would be even better.
Right.
Like, we are focusing a lot on user experience a lot, and I have a user experience testing background, so I understand why it's very important. But there's also like a possibility to create new financial products with DeFi. Out of the legacy systems, comes a much more opportunity by decentralizing or giving people their own control of their own money. So where do you see this going? Like, are there any ideas how this can transform finance even more?
Yeah, I mean, like, so I would say there's reinventing finance using DeFi primitives, what we already have as finance. Then there is creating new models for financial products that perform better than existing finance. And then there's increasing the total addressable market of finance, right? So the first one is, we've got lending in traditional sector. Let's work out a way of doing lending on top of blockchain. This is the 2017 like era of the first ways in which people invented stuff, where like ETH which became Aave, did lending in a very much more traditional way. It was like a one-to-one. It's like, you want to lend your ETH, I will borrow your ETH, and it was a one-to-one transaction of this person choosing that person to lend to. And then there's the reinventing things in a DeFi way, going, well, why does it have to be like that? What if we just have a big bucket and you just own a share of that bucket, and then people can pull out of the bucket or put into the bucket depending on whether or not they want to borrow or lend? And now we have a many-to-one relationship where many people are lending in aggregate to one person. And so now you have this new concept because you can describe things in a way that would just be so difficult to do as legal contracts. But in code, it's super easy. Like pools and shares is a new way of doing things in DeFi. It created stuff like Aave, it created stuff like Uniswap and the constant function market maker. And it is starting to eat the edges of the financial market. We're not getting to the really like nitty gritty stuff, but like the ECB is already talking about doing a bond issuance on top of a public ledger, and like there are some companies who are lending cryptocurrencies to weed businesses because weed businesses can't access the normal like lending markets. So there are some products that are sort of like the crypto liquidity is getting big enough that certain parts of the market are going, I can go there for better liquidity. And this is what it's going to come down to. This is fundamentally how we are going to win and eat the world, is that the capital markets care about nothing apart from the efficient allocation of capital. And fundamentally, a programmable ledger in which all capital can move around the world instantly to the best opportunity is always going to be better than the legacy financial system. It's just we're still like working out the best ways of building this in a risk-adjusted way, right? And then the third bit is the second bit is then using these DeFi primitives to build better financial products than traditional finance. So a great example, I love Potion Finance. I have a little bit of a crush on those guys. Potion.finance. They haven't launched yet, but they realized that you could use shelling points to create like future curves on pricing of options in a way that exceeded the performance of the Black-Scholes Merton model. Like that's mind-blowing for anyone who sort of is a financial geek. Like the Black-Scholes Merton model won the Nobel Prize, and these guys have come up with a way using DeFi of creating a more efficient way of risk pricing future risk. Like mad, absolutely mad. And that's just a taste of where we're going, well, we've got these primitives and we have this way of getting an emergent group consensus around what price should be based on their individual like preferences all mapped together to create these systems that are better at allocation of capital than the existing financial markets ever could be. And then total addressable market, like the market today is mainly addressing the wealthy nations. Like the financial markets of today are mainly addressing the wealthy nations. And like people always talk about crypto from the point of view of the unbanked and the underbanked. I don't think that's why this is revolutionary. I think it's more revolutionary from the point of view of the uninvested or the underinvested. Like fundamentally, banks are not just a safe place to put your money. It's a safe place to put your money to grow for the future. And that's why people want to store wealth and value, and giving people access to financial services and opportunities to grow their money that they wouldn't have otherwise is going to increase the total addressable market of finance. Full stop. So like, even though we're talking about a $360 trillion asset, $1 trillion of total locked value in traditional financial sector, like we're not actually even addressing the whole world. We're not even addressing 50% of the world. Like what happens when you do that? And then you can start to see how big DeFi's maybe going to be.
There's so much opportunity here. I think when I talk to my friends, I always first start by what are the problems? You know, what are your current problems financially or by keeping money in the bank? And then they realize there's something about inflation, or the rates have gone down, and then they ask me like, what are you doing in crypto? And basically in one sentence I can say, well, it solves all those problems, or there is a solution, even though maybe a little bit premature or experimental, there is some kind of solution for that. So it definitely, you know, gives some opportunities there. A small reminder for our listeners that we have a giveaway for $1,000 in RADIX. Make sure you look in the description on how to participate in the giveaway, and keep an eye on the screen, because sometimes a code is flashed and you need that for the giveaway. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel to keep updated with every new webinar, and you'll get alerted when we launch a new webinar. So let's continue. I see you've mentioned that you are in good contact with Avi, and it is through Defy. You also mentioned Potion. Are there any other blockchain startups you really like and are considering some potential collaborations with?
So I like every project that is fundamentally either has nailed the idea of bringing liquidity in from users and applying that in a way that's sustainable. I'm fine with bootstrapping liquidity with massive yields and stuff like that, but there has to be in the system some way in which that is actually going to create sustainable models for because ultimately we are trying to not be a place for scammers, and the more that we build things and invest in things that are clearly scams and we're just aping into it, the more that we actually create a long-term brand problem for crypto as a whole, and the harder it is to get. One of the conversations that I had with one of the users that we were interviewing for Defy was, crypto's just all a scam, right? And it's that's still a mentality. It's a huge mentality.
It's a bubble. It's a bubble.
It's tulips.
I have a friend that he actually works in finance.
Yeah.
And he insisted, he was saying, okay, Bitcoin is a scam, it's a bubble, and then a few days ago he said, okay, I threw the towel because Elon Musk actually said about Bitcoin, right? Yeah, it's hard even for people in finance actually to convince them and actually prove how much beneficial this is for not just the finance, but for the world in the future.
So to answer the question more directly, I am happy and would like to collaborate with any project that is meaningfully trying to innovate or increase the total addressable market of DeFi. That's what this game is right now. I talk about the start of the internet. When the internet first started, it was really hard to get people online. You needed an engineer to come to your house to plug you into the internet. Problem number one. Problem number two, most people didn't have personal computers. So you need to convince them to buy an expensive piece of equipment to be able to do this thing. Problem number three, you have to teach them to use a browser. As much as you think it is just a completely intuitive thing, it's not. It's really technical, really difficult to get your head around, really difficult to understand what this thing a browser is. So internet connection, computer, browser. And right now we're in the same thing with crypto. What we need people to do is get crypto, have a DeFi wallet, and to use their first DeFi project, right? And those three things are a big lift, and the reason and the only way that you get people into this space is that you give them enough motivation and belief to get over the pain of it, because it isn't better. As much as we'd like to say it isn't better than the current financial system is from a user experience point of view. It is a lot worse. And so you have to be able to get people to get over the pain of that first thing to get into it. So our job as an industry, everyone who's on this call, is to go inspire people into why DeFi matters. Not just you can make big gains. It's we need evangelists, and we need to get more people joining the space.
Exactly. And then I have a question on that, because we are talking about scaling DeFi. How do you see DeFi changing the world? I guess you have answered this up to a point. And where do you see legacy platforms in that? Like, for example, like banks.
Okay, so
Do you see them? How do you see them in the picture? Do you see them out of the picture? Do you see them partially in the picture?
the world isn't black and white, right? Like nothing. Everything is shades of gray. Everything is shades of color. So banks won't disappear. They will adapt, but their role will be lessened. So if you think of it from the point of view of like when the internet first came out, what was the main form of information that people got? It was newspapers. Like, have newspapers died today? No. But are they as important? Not even close, right?
Yeah.
And what came instead were new ways of sharing information. We got things like Medium and Facebook news feeds and Twitter and all of these new ways of sharing information, and YouTube and TikTok, and like all of this stuff replaced what we took as our information sources before. And the same thing is going to happen with finance. It's, like I can't sit here and say Goldman Sachs is no longer going to be around in 50 years, but it certainly will not look the same today as it does today. I hope that its role in the world is considerably lesser as well, because I don't think these institutions that have a huge amount of power and influence in the background should have that power and influence. I don't think it's good for the world. Like, what people forget is that the consumer deposits and savings are the fuel for the entire financial system. So I should say consumer deposits, savings, and spending. Consumers spend in the economy, that businesses service those consumers, and then there are some businesses that service those businesses, but ultimately the reason they make money is because consumers are spending. Like, taking out the idea of government spending from this, but that's still from consumer taxes. So fundamentally, if we withdraw our money from the banking system, we bring down the current financial system and we create a new one. Like, fund managers, we don't serve fund managers serve us. And things like institutions like Goldman Sachs shouldn't exist in the way that they do and won't in the future, but that they will stay because their reputation is there and their brand is there. They'll just do something lesser than what is now. And in terms of what is in store for the world with decentralized finance, its end state is a redefinition of what it means to be a nation state. The concept of citizenship. Like, the fact that I can't move between countries and automatically be paying my contributions based on just moving across borders, such that I am within a country, I'm using the infrastructure, whatever. Like, the idea that, the concept of tax residency is weird. The concept of being able to pay, being able to pay someone as a small company in another jurisdiction is really, really difficult. Like, all of that stuff is screwy. And the idea of how taxes are used, like completely opaque and very much non-accountable to the citizen, like all of that stuff is going to change as well. What you see in how communities are important in crypto, communities define nations. They're just called, it's just the citizens of the nation. It's still a community with a collective identity. And so that's where decentralized finance will eventually get to, because everything ultimately flows back to how money flows around collective actions that individuals want or believe that they need. And so that's what we're doing. We're redefining the way the world organizes around things, and that's kind of crazy and super exciting.
It sounds so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Abe.
And I'm seeing a question in the chat, and I'm also wondering myself, how do you translate this to RADIX? And the question is, what is the future hiding for RADIX? And can you give a hint about what's coming in for a project? And I think that's somewhere in your view already, about where DeFi is heading. But how does that translate to RADIX?
That is also one. That is also my question. How do you envision RADIX future, right? In what you described just now, when we scale this DeFi space to the entire globe.
So like long term, the benefits of everything being on a single piece of infrastructure is likely to outweigh anything else. So like we obviously want to be that piece of infrastructure. We want to be the place in which all of the things I've described happen. And so from RADIX's point of view, the starting point has always been like you fundamentally can't. Public decentralized ledgers are not the same as software companies in aggregate. It's more like shipping hardware. Like once you've shipped the hardware into the field, it becomes massively expensive and difficult to change it. So this all just comes back to all of the things I was talking about. Is like we believe that the global financial system is going to be on a public ledger, and for that future financial system to be on a public ledger in a way that it can get to 7 billion people, it has to allow innovation without people having constantly worrying about hacks and exploits and getting in the way of people just being able to build stuff that's innovative. It has to reward the community for making the place better, and it has to scale without friction. And fundamentally, what a platform like us is a place for the success of the people who are choosing to build on top of it. So everything that we're doing is about how do we make sure that people are as successful as possible. All the stuff I've spoken about so far is technological, right? But there is a whole bunch of stuff that is important around liquidity, around allowing people to move between ledgers seamlessly, about giving the right incentives for new users to come into the system, around incentives to use the system, around solving problems around local currencies that stable value but locally, that make people able to get exposure to DeFi but in their local currencies. Like there's so many things that need to be solved, but what we have to be really careful of is going, this is how we build a place that people can be as successful as possible, rather than going beyond that and starting to build things that would necessarily compete with people. And that's a really hard balance to strike. So what you're going to see, sorry, this is a really long answer to a simple question.
No, it's fine. You have to elaborate.
Mainnet is coming at the end of June. Is scheduled for the end of June. Our new building environment, Scripto, is going to come out with Alexandria, which is going to be Q4 of this year, and then Babylon will be in 2022, which is where things like on-ledger developer royalties are introduced, and the full ability to deploy decentralized finance applications on top of RADIX will come about. So first things first, make sure that our new consensus system works in the way it's supposed to, that the security model works, and that the ledger is efficient and reliable. Second thing, introduce the language, make sure that it works for developers, make sure that we work out any kinks in it before it ends up on ledger and you can't go back, right? So have that testing period, and then get it onto ledger once we've done the user testing, once we've proven out the way in which we can 10x people's productivity and reduce the barriers to entry to be able to go and build on these ledgers. And at that point, by Babylon, also make sure all of the right incentives are in place for developers, for users, for liquidity providers, and all of the stuff that you would expect to be. But it's not a short journey, and like we see this as the start of a 50-year journey to the entire, to getting to where we were talking about reshaping the way that nations are considered, right?
Yeah, exactly, and definitely it's going to be a long journey, and I guess it's going to be a difficult journey. As I said, my main concern here is how to get people out of this comfort zone and be dependent about their wealth.
Yes, and that's where things like Defy and education come in. Like that's huge. And then the other stuff is just like build better consumer experiences. Like we just have to get we think we're good at consumer experiences, but I mean, like even just stuff like Uniswap v3. Like,
no,
Uniswap-
we are not. Actually, there is. I don't remember who said that. I think it was Albert Einstein. That if you cannot explain something to a 5-year-old boy, then you have failed. You don't understand yourself.
Mhm.
So we need actually to get people that have no internet, have no access to, I don't know, to desktop PC to actually become independent and hold their wealth. So it's not an easy journey, but yeah, we will get there, I guess.
We will, yes.
Any other questions from you, Aperture?
I think we
we have-
covered quite a lot. Maybe, you know, if you still have some like final messages for the community, what do you really need to know about RADIX, or you know, some advice navigating in the DeFi space, what would you say then?
So to summarize RADIX, RADIX is the only decentralized network where DeFi developers will be able to build quickly without the constant threat of exploits and hacks, where every improvement will get rewarded and where scale will never be a bottleneck. If that sounds interesting to you, please come and join our Telegram community. Come follow us on Twitter at RADIXDLT, or follow me at Piers Ridyard, or come and join our Discord. But the best places to find all of those is radixdlt.com, RADIX DLT.com. And then in terms of final thoughts, like if you're just getting into DeFi, if you're just getting into crypto, my biggest piece of advice is always back up your private key.
And by the way, all the information about Piers and RADIX are in the description. So check them out. We are talking about an amazing project with lots of potential.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you so much for your time. That was an amazing live stream. Too much information, but hopefully in the future we will see RADIX becoming bigger and see people having an easier journey into crypto and DeFi.
That would
As
make me
easy
very happy.
as possible. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.